Have you ever done something kind and then spent the rest of the day picking yourself apart for not doing it better? That quiet voice that says it wasn't enough. It never rests, does it? The Buddha saw this particular pain clearly, 2,500 years ago. He understood why the very people who care the most are often the hardest on themselves. Today's teaching holds the answer, and it might gently change the way you see everything you've already given. One quiet afternoon, in a small monastery nestled among bamboo groves in ancient India, sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft patterns on the earth. A gentle wind moved slowly through the bamboo. Somewhere in the distance, a bird was calling. You could hear the faint sound of flowing water. There was a stillness to that place. The disciples had settled wherever felt right to them, some sitting with eyes closed, others simply gazing at their open palms. No one was in a hurry. No one was reaching for anything. And yet among them, one man sat apart from the rest. His hands rested on his knees. His eyes were fixed somewhere far away, as if he were deep in thought, or perhaps thinking nothing at all. It was impossible to tell. That day he had decided to go to the Buddha. He walked slowly, his sandals pressing quiet impressions into the soft earth, each step deliberate, as though the ground itself deserved his attention. When he finally reached the Buddha and sat down, he said nothing at first, only looked at his own hands, the same hands he had looked at 1,000 times before, as if seeing them now for the very first time. Then at last he spoke. "Teacher," he said, "I've been practicing for many years, and still I do not know if I am any closer to what I am looking for." The Buddha did not answer right away. He simply looked at the man the way one might look at a river, not trying to stop it, not trying to hurry it along. His name was Chunda. He was a blacksmith, an ordinary man, a lay follower of no particular distinction. For a long time, he had been carrying a quiet kind of suffering. The kind that's hard to speak aloud, the kind that never quite goes away. The people who came to sit with the Buddha all seemed in some way at peace. They would offer words of gratitude, press their palms together, and walk away in quiet contentment. But Chunda couldn't be that way. He simply couldn't. His mother had died after a long illness. His father had left home when Chunda was young. His brother had gone to a distant land and stopped writing altogether. And just recently, the teacher who had cared for him in his old age had also passed on before him. Be grateful, people would say. To be alive at all is a blessing. But no matter how many times Chunda heard those words, they never settled in his chest. Every time he tried to feel grateful, something else rose up from somewhere deep inside. Why only me? Others have it so much better. If only I'd been given more. And every time that happened, Chunda turned on himself. What a small and shameful person I am, he would think, for not being able to feel grateful. When Chunda finally sat before the Buddha, he was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he found his words. "Blessed One, I cannot feel gratitude, not for being alive, not for the people in my life. The harder I try, the more it hurts. Is something wrong with me?" The Buddha did not answer right away. He simply received Chunda's words, as if quietly taking them in, and closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he said, "Chunda, there is a saying in the Dhammapada, the mind is forerunner of all things. Mind is chief, all is mind-made." Chunda tilted his head slightly. "What does that mean exactly? When you try to feel grateful, what is your mind looking at?" "It's looking at what I don't have, at what was never given to me." "Yes," the Buddha said, "the mind has made what is missing its chief concern, and so it creates that world. Your inability to feel grateful doesn't mean your heart is cold. It means your mind is simply pointed in a certain direction right now." Chunda was quiet. Then, "How do I make myself feel grateful?" The Buddha answered gently as always, changed the question. Not "how can I feel grateful," but "what is my mind looking at right now?" What it's looking at. Yes, straining to feel grateful is like trying to grab water with your hands. The harder you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you lower your hands gently into the water, it is already there. Chunda sat with those words for a while. So gratitude isn't something we manufacture? The Buddha nodded quietly. When the direction of the mind shifts, gratitude arises on its own. But that shift is not something you force. It begins simply with noticing, where is my mind looking right now? Chunda lowered his eyes. After a long silence, he said quietly, I've been looking at what's missing for so long. And now, in this moment, you've noticed that. That noticing, that is the beginning. The wind moved through the bamboo again, slow and soft. Chunda looked down at his hands, the rough palms, the burn marks from the forge, the years written into the skin. He had looked at these hands 10,000 times and seen only what they lacked. Now, for just a moment, he simply saw his hands. He did not weep, he did not smile, but something in his chest, very quietly, set down what it had been carrying. The mind is forerunner of all things. Mind is chief. All is mind-made. These words open the Dhammapada, one of the most foundational texts in all of Buddhist teaching. What they point to is this. The world we experience is not simply out there, waiting to be seen. It is in large part shaped by the mind that is doing the seeing. When we can't feel grateful, we tend to assume the problem is on the outside. Not enough was given. Life hasn't been kind, and so there's nothing to be grateful for. But let's pause here for just a moment. Why we can't feel grateful, the inability to feel grateful, doesn't come from a shortage of things to appreciate. It comes from a gap between what the mind believes should be true and what actually is. Take this example, someone who can't feel grateful for their health. Underneath that is often an unspoken assumption. Of course I should be healthy, that's just normal. And because it feels normal, it becomes invisible. It no longer registers as something to receive with gratitude. The suffering of I can't feel grateful doesn't arise from an absence of good things. It arises from a rigid inner standard, a fixed idea of how things should be. And here's the important part. That is not a character flaw. It is a matter of where the mind is looking. There's something else worth understanding. Many of us carry a fixed image of ourselves, a grateful self and an ungrateful self, and we treat the ungrateful version as evidence of something broken inside us, rethinking who you are. But in the Buddhist view, there's no such fixed, permanent thing as an ungrateful person. What we call the self is at any given moment simply a gathering of conditions. When we're exhausted, when we're grieving, when something essential feels missing, those conditions come together, and what arises in that moment is a state called unable to feel grateful. That's all it is. You are not cold-hearted. Your mind is simply facing a particular direction right now, and directions can change. When conditions shift, the way we see things shifts with them. But that shift does not come from forcing yourself to feel something. Forcing it only creates yet another fixed idea. I'm failing because I can't feel grateful, which just adds another layer of suffering on top of the first. As the Dhammapada teaches, the mind comes first. Trying to rearrange things on the outside won't change how the world looks if the mind's direction stays the same. But when the direction shifts even slightly, something that was always there, something you couldn't see before, can quietly come into view. That is what Buddhism means when it says gratitude arises. Gratitude is not manufactured. It is something that becomes visible. And the first step toward that, stopping the habit of blaming yourself for not feeling it. When you're busy blaming yourself, the mind is once again fixed on what I should be but am not. And that very pattern is what keeps the suffering in place. Think of someone sitting in a dark room, convinced there is nothing beautiful to see. The room itself has not changed, but when someone quietly opens the curtains, even a little, light they never knew was there begins to fall across ordinary things. What was always present simply could not be seen until the angle of looking shifted. So how does this show up in the lives we're actually living? Let's look at 3 everyday situations together. The first is work. When you've been at the same job for a long time, gratitude for having work at all tends to fade. A quiet assumption takes hold. Of course I have a job, of course I get paid. It becomes the baseline, the new normal. And when that happens, even a small frustration can feel enormous. Dissatisfaction grows sharp and clear, while gratitude grows dim and distant. The next time you catch yourself thinking, there's nothing to be grateful for in this place, pause and ask, is this workplace genuinely bad? Or has my mind simply built a very rigid picture of how work should be? The answer might be both, but what Buddhism asks is, where did that standard come from? Are you living by a picture someone else drew, one you absorbed without realizing it? That question lands quietly, but it lands deep. The second is relationships. You helped someone, they didn't say thank you, they treated your effort as nothing special. In moments like that, the question of gratitude flips. Instead of feeling it, you find yourself needing it and not getting it. This is something many of us know well, but there's something deeper here. The feeling of I helped them so they should be grateful. Seen through the Buddhist lens of interdependence, it looks a little different. Buddhism teaches connection comes first, I comes after. The fact that you were able to help someone didn't come from you alone. Someone raised you, circumstances shaped you. A whole web of causes and conditions converged to place a person capable of helping exactly there in that moment. The expectation of receiving gratitude often grows from a view of the self as separate. I gave this, they owe me that. When the sense of being held within a larger web of connection deepens even slightly, that particular ache, the hunger for acknowledgement, can begin to change its shape. The third is the most ordinary of all. Every morning you wake up, you eat, you talk with someone. Keep a gratitude journal, people say. And many of us try. But when it doesn't stick, when we can't keep it up, we do what Chunda did. We turn on ourselves. I can't even do this right. That's exactly where the Buddha's words to Chunda matter. Straining to feel grateful is like trying to grab water with your hands. Gratitude is not something the will can seize. It arises when the direction of the mind shifts. The practice isn't forcing a feeling. It's gently loosening the word of course from the things you've stopped noticing. Just a little. Just enough to let them be seen again. That moment might look like pausing before the first sip of morning coffee, not to perform thankfulness, but simply to notice. Warmth, a ceramic rim, the smell of something roasted far away, hands that carried it here. Nothing added, nothing forced, just the thing itself, briefly allowed to be remarkable. And sometimes, that's enough. The loosening happens on its own, the way ice doesn't melt because you demand it to, but because the conditions are right. So if there's just one small thing to try today, here are 2 gentle suggestions. The first is, practice not trying to feel grateful. I know that sounds backwards, but stay with it. For today, release the effort. When you hear that inner voice saying you should feel more thankful, don't fight it and don't follow it. Just notice it. Oh, there's that voice again. That's all. This connects to what the Buddha taught his students as right mindfulness, the practice of staying aware of this present moment. Not trying to change anything. Not fixing anything. Simply seeing what is actually here, as it is. Noticing I can't feel grateful right now, without judgment, without blame, is enough. Just that noticing allows the mind to release a little of its grip. The second is, practice counting the happen-tos. Before you sleep tonight, bring one moment from today to mind. One ordinary thing you might have called of course, and try saying it differently. Today I happened to eat. Today I happened to talk with someone. That person happened to be there. You're not trying to manufacture gratitude. You're simply loosening, just slightly, the fixed weight of course. Whether gratitude actually arrives, I can't promise. But when that of course softens even a little, the way the mind sees things has a way of quietly shifting. Not for everyone, not every time, but it does happen. A monk I once heard of kept a worn slip of paper by his sleeping mat, and each night he wrote not I am grateful for, but simply today this happened. After many years, someone asked him if the practice had made him a more grateful person. He paused for a long moment, then said, I'm not sure, but I stopped being so surprised when good things ended. Perhaps that is where gratitude quietly lives, not in the feeling we chase, but in the softening that comes when we stop assuming the world owes us its constancy. When was the last time you stopped blaming yourself for not feeling grateful? Maybe you can't remember. Maybe it's never happened. That's all right. You don't need an answer right now. Just sit with the question for a little while. Let it be here with you. There's no rush. A monk once told me he spent 3 years trying to force gratitude like a man trying to pry open a flower with his fingers. One morning he simply sat down, put his hands in his lap, and let the flower be closed. By the time he looked up, the flower had opened on its own. We once explored why gratitude fades from view entirely, and what Buddhism quietly reveals beneath that silence in a previous teaching. There are people who have spent years, long years, blaming themselves for not being able to feel grateful. They were not cold people. They were not broken people. Their minds were simply facing a particular direction. The Dhammapada says, the mind is forerunner of all things. The mind comes first. Before searching for something to be grateful for, simply notice, where is my mind looking right now? Just that one quiet act of noticing can make today feel ever so slightly different. When you release the demand that you must feel grateful, sometimes in that silence, something you couldn't quite see before comes softly into view. Whether that's gratitude, I can't say for certain. But it is the moment your mind turned, just a little, in a new direction. Chunda walked out of that bamboo grove the same person who had walked in. The path home was the same path he had come by. And yet, it may have looked a little different to him than it had before. Not because the path had changed, but because something in him had. Thank you so much for spending this time here with me today. I hope your heart finds a little rest tonight. May you too find yourself on some ordinary path, walking back to your car, or stepping outside for a moment of air, and notice, without quite expecting it, that something looks a little different than it did this morning. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a quiet turning. Whose face came to mind while you were listening today? One story a day. In a week, your words will change. In a month, your eyes will change. In a year, the same world will look completely different.